In the spring of 1943, a small agricultural station outside Rothamsted, England, recorded something that shouldn't have been possible. A plot of runner beans treated with a liquid made from nothing more than fermented nettles, and rainwater yielded 340% more pods than the control plot fertilized with standard ammonium nitrate. The researcher, a man named Dr. Alan Winstow, noted the result in his logbook with one line. Liquid appears to accelerate cellular mitosis beyond any mechanism currently documented. The trial was never published. Winstow died in 1947. His notes were archived in a filing cabinet at the Royal Horticultural Society and remained untouched until 2009, when a graduate student cataloguing wartime agricultural records found them by accident. What Winstow had stumbled onto wasn't new. It was old. Older than his lab. Older than the war. And it had been working quietly in kitchen gardens, monastery plots, and survival farms across Europe for centuries. It is a method so simple that modern agronomists dismissed it as folk practice. But the results, when done correctly, are undeniable. You water once, the plant explodes. Stay with me. The next detail changes how this actually works. Right now, in 2026, a single tomato plant started from seed costs roughly $4 to bring to first harvest using store-bought fertilizer. That includes starter mix, transplant soil, and 3 applications of granular 10-10-10 nitrogen phosphorus potassium blend. If you're feeding a family of 4 and want to grow enough tomatoes, peppers, beans, and squash to supplement meals from June through September, you're looking at around $160 in fertilizer and soil amendments alone. Before water, before seeds, before time. And every year, you pay it again. Because synthetic fertilizers don't stay in the soil. They dissolve. They leach. They run off. By design, they're temporary. That's not a flaw, it's the model. Repeat purchase. Endless dependency. But what if the thing your plants actually needed wasn't being sold at all? What if it was sitting in your yard, growing in the ditch by the road, or lying brown and forgotten under a tree? That's not speculation. It's what people used before the petroleum-based Green Revolution made them forget. The substance Winstow tested in 1943 is called fermented plant extract, sometimes known in historical texts as green manure tea, weed liquor, or liquid compost. It's made by submerging freshly cut plant material, usually high in nitrogen like nettles, comfrey, clover, or alfalfa, in non-chlorinated water for anywhere from 10 to 21 days, depending on temperature. As the plant matter breaks down anaerobically, it releases a concentrated solution of nutrients, enzymes, growth hormones, and beneficial microbes. You dilute it, you water with it once, sometimes twice, and the plant responds like it's been shocked awake. Not every plant works. The ones that do share specific traits. Deep taproots that pull trace minerals from subsoil, high nitrogen content in their leaves, or rapid decomposition rates that release bioavailable nutrients without the need for heat composting. Comfrey, for example, is called Symphytum officinale in Latin. Its roots descend as deep as 10 feet. It pulls potassium, calcium, and trace boron that shallow-rooted crops can't reach. When those leaves are fermented, that mineral load becomes liquid and mobile. Nettles, Urtica dioica, are even more aggressive. They concentrate nitrogen, iron, sulfur, and silica. 1 kilogram of fresh nettle leaves, steeped in 10 liters of water for 14 days, yields a solution so rich in plant-available nitrogen that it rivals synthetic ammonium sulfate in potency, but without the salt burn or nutrient lockout that comes with overuse of chemical salts. This isn't theory. It's biochemistry that was understood and applied long before anyone had a lab to prove why it worked. In the winter of 1916, Germany was losing the war, not just on the front, but at home. The British naval blockade had cut off imports of Chilean saltpeter, the primary source of nitrogen fertilizer at the time. Without it, domestic food production collapsed. By 1917, over 750,000 German civilians had died from starvation and malnutrition-related disease in what historians now call the Steckruben winter, the turnip winter. But not everywhere. In rural Bavaria, in parts of Saxony, and across isolated alpine villages, people survived. Not because they had food shipments, not because they had access to black market grain. They survived because they knew how to feed their soil without imports. Monastery records from the Benedictine Abbey at Andex, dated March 1917, describe the preparation of Pflanzenjauche, literally plant slurry, from nettles, yarrow, and horsetail gathered from the surrounding forest. The monks applied it to their vegetable gardens in early spring. By June, they were harvesting cabbages that weighed twice the normal size. One entry, written by Brother Friedrich Meinhof, states, "The earth responds to what it recognizes. We give it back its own children, and it gives us food." It wasn't mysticism. It was survival agriculture under siege. And it worked. When the war ended, the practice didn't disappear immediately. It lingered in rural areas through the 1920s and into the Depression. But by the 1950s, with the rise of synthetic ammonia production via the Haber-Bosch process, fermented plant extracts were quietly abandoned. Not because they stopped working, because they couldn't be sold. Watch closely. This part is usually skipped. In 1978, a research team at the University of Kassel in Germany ran a 2-year comparative trial on the effects of fermented nettle extract versus synthetic NPK fertilizer on potato yields. They used identical soil conditions, identical seed stock, identical watering schedules. The only variable was the fertilizer source. Results published in Biological Agriculture and Horticulture showed that potatoes treated with diluted nettle extract produced 22% more tubers by weight than those treated with standard synthetic fertilizer. More importantly, the potatoes stored longer, they showed 40% less rot after 3 months in cold storage. The study noted one other finding that didn't make the abstract. Soil treated with nettle extract showed a 310% increase in microbial biomass. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, compared to soil treated with synthetic salts, which showed a 17% decline in microbial life over the same period. That's the hidden cost of chemical dependence. Synthetic fertilizers feed the plant directly, but they starve the soil. Over time, the soil becomes a sterile medium, incapable of supporting life without continuous external input. Fermented plant extracts do the opposite. They feed the soil first. The soil feeds the plant, and the system becomes self-reinforcing. In 1998, a French agricultural cooperative in Brittany tested comfrey extract on greenhouse tomatoes. They applied it twice, once at transplant, once at early flowering. The result? A 68% increase in fruit set and a 12-day earlier harvest compared to untreated controls. The cooperative reported the findings internally. It was never published in a journal. No press release, no white paper. Why? Because the co-op also sold certified organic fertilizers. And fermented comfrey can't be patented, trademarked, or bottled at scale without losing efficacy. It only works fresh. It only works local. And it only works if you make it yourself. That makes it economically invisible. So how do you actually do this? First, selection. The best plants for fermentation are those that grow aggressively, accumulate minerals, and break down fast. Nettles, comfrey, yarrow, borage, alfalfa, and clover all qualify. Avoid anything toxic or allelopathic, like black walnut or eucalyptus, because those compounds don't neutralize during fermentation. You need about 1 kilogram of fresh plant material for every 10 liters of water. Rainwater is ideal. Tap water works if you let it sit uncovered for 24 hours to off-gas chlorine. which can kill beneficial microbes. Chop the plant material roughly. Pack it into a bucket or barrel. Plastic, ceramic, or food grade resin. Don't use metal. The acids produced during fermentation will corrode it. Cover the plant material with water. Weigh it down with a stone or plate so it stays submerged. Cover loosely with a lid or cloth. You want airflow, but not insects. Place the container in a shaded spot. Temperature matters. At 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, 59 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, fermentation takes 18 to 21 days. At 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, 77 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, it can finish in 10 to 12 days. You'll know it's ready by smell. It will reek, not rot. Fermentation. Pungent, ammoniac, sour. If it smells sulfuric or like decay, it's gone anaerobic in the wrong way. Dump it and start over. Strain the liquid. Compost the solids. Dilute the liquid 10 to 1 with water for root drench or 20 to 1 for foliar spray. Use it within a week. It doesn't store. The microbial activity that makes it effective also makes it unstable. One application at transplant, one at early flowering or fruiting. That's it. In the summer of 2003, a community garden collective in Detroit, Michigan, started experimenting with nettle and comfrey extracts after reading a translated German gardening manual from the 1930s. They were working in vacant lots with soils so depleted it had been classified as urban fill. Construction debris, ash, and compacted clay with virtually no organic matter. Synthetic fertilizers helped, but the cost was prohibitive. Most members were growing food out of necessity, not hobby. They needed results on a budget of zero. So they harvested nettles from abandoned industrial sites along the rail corridor. Comfrey was sourced from a single plant someone had growing behind a church. They fermented in 55-gallon plastic drums donated by a shuttered brewery. First season, modest improvement, tomatoes fruited 2 weeks earlier. Beans were more prolific. Second season, they refined the timing. Applied extract at transplant and again right before flowering. Yields doubled. By the third season, they were producing enough surplus to run a weekly farm stand and donate to 2 local food banks. A soil test conducted by a Michigan State Extension agent in 2006 showed that organic matter in the treated plots had increased from 1.2% to 4.7% in just 3 growing seasons, a rate of improvement that typically takes a decade or more with compost alone. The agent wrote in her report, "I don't know what they're doing, but it's working. The biology in this soil is better than some commercial farms I have tested." That knowledge didn't come from a university. It came from a 90-year-old book written by a German gardener who survived 2 world wars. And it worked in Detroit in 2003 the same way it worked in Bavaria in 1917. Because plants haven't changed. Soil hasn't changed. The knowledge was just buried under a century of advertising. Here's what no one tells you. The global synthetic fertilizer market was valued at $197 billion in 2025. It's expected to grow. Not because populations are growing faster than food production. They're not. But because the system is built on product dependency, not soil health. When you apply synthetic nitrogen, whether it's urea, ammonium nitrate, or anhydrous ammonia, you get fast results. The plant greens up. It grows. It produces. But the soil microbiome collapses. Bacteria that fix nitrogen naturally, like rhizobium and azotobacter, die off. Mycorrhizal fungi, the underground network that trades minerals for sugars and extends root reach by up to 1000%, withers. After a few seasons, the soil can't function without input. You're not feeding a garden, you're keeping a patient on life support. And every year, you pay again. Fermented plant extracts don't replace the system. They rebuild it. They reintroduce microbial diversity. They chelate minerals, making them available to roots. They stimulate enzyme production. They increase nutrient density in the fruit itself, not just size or weight, but the actual vitamin, mineral, and antioxidant content. A 2012 study from the Institute of Organic Agriculture in Bonn tested nutrient density in tomatoes grown with synthetic fertilizer versus those grown with comfrey extract. Synthetic tomatoes, larger, more uniform. Comfrey tomatoes, 31% higher in vitamin C, 27% higher in lycopene, and significantly higher in calcium and magnesium. The paper concluded, biological fertilization methods may enhance not only yield stability, but also nutritional quality, a factor increasingly relevant in micronutrient deficient populations. That study got 11 citations. It was published in a niche journal. It never made mainstream agricultural news. Because if the solution doesn't require a supply chain, it's not economically interesting. Let's zoom out. Right now, in 2026, we're watching the early stages of something larger. Fertilizer prices have spiked twice in the last 4 years due to natural gas shortages and export restrictions from major producers like Russia and China. Farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and parts of Latin America are already priced out. That doesn't just mean lower yields, it means hunger. It means migration. It means instability. At the same time, climate instability is changing rainfall patterns, increasing soil erosion, and making industrial monoculture less viable in regions that have depended on it for decades. The logic that built the Green Revolution, cheap energy, cheap inputs, infinite growth, is breaking. And the systems that worked before it are still here. Quiet, functional, forgotten. Fermented plant extracts aren't a replacement for modern agriculture. They're a hedge, a backup, a way to keep growing food when the supply chain falters, when the price becomes unaffordable, or when you just want your soil to remember how to be alive. You don't need a lab. You don't need certification. You don't need a degree in soil science. You need nettles. You need water. You need 2 weeks. And you need to remember that people who survived the hardest years in modern history didn't do it with products. They did it with knowledge. In 1943, Dr. Alan Winstow wrote one line about beans that tripled their yield with nothing but fermented nettles. He didn't know why it worked, but he knew it did. 83 years later, we have the science to explain it. We have the studies to confirm it. We have the soil tests, the yield data, the nutrient analysis. And still, almost no one knows. Not because the information is hidden, because it's not sold. But you can't unsee it now. You can't unknow that the thing your grandparents used, that monks used, that survived 2 wars and a depression, still works. It works in England. It works in Germany. It works in Detroit. And it will work in your backyard. If remembering what was forgotten matters to you, subscribe to Roots of Survival. Every share helps keep this knowledge alive.